Well, this week we are exploring some of the basics of relationships, how relationships form, the different types of relationships, how we maintain those relationships, and even how those relationships may de-escalate and be terminated. Now, because you all have a rich set of experiences in regard to different types of relationships, whether they be impersonal or intimate, whether they be friendships or romantic, many of you probably think that you know a lot about relationships, and you do. Your experiential knowledge really helps you to learn how to adapt and learn how to take lessons learned from one relationship and apply them in other areas. You really learn how to read context and make those necessary flexible adaptations within those situations. But all in all, you really need to learn the basic vocabulary related to these relationships in order to answer test questions and be able to talk about them throughout the course of this semester. So I'm going to introduce you to some of that vocabulary today. Not the most fun stuff, but you gotta know it, okay? A relationship is defined as a set of expectations two people have for their behavior based on the pattern of interaction between them. So, as you see, a relationship, in many cases, we think about predictively based on the past what someone's going to act like in the future. Not that we can truly predict anyone's behaviors, but we think about that because it becomes a pattern between two people or more people, and it's a set of expectations that they have for those behaviors. Now, like I said, you have multiple types of relationships. An interpersonal relationship is a series of interactions between two individuals known to each other. So they know one another, they're aware of these interactions, they acknowledge these interactions. So it's not you passing somebody that you think's cute across campus and you think you have an interpersonal relationship because you noticed them, maybe you even waved to them. But if they didn't notice you back and you weren't known to them, then you're definitely not going to qualify for an interpersonal relationship. Impersonal relationships are based on immediate needs that someone can fulfill for you or a particular role that they have. For example, you have a lot of impersonal relationships in the classroom, even probably with coworkers that you have. Maybe you have like a friend of a friend of a friend, and that's a pretty impersonal relationship because it's immediate or it's just based on some connection you have through the role of friendship with somebody else. So that can be very impersonal. And then on the other hand, you have personal relationships in which you disclose information to one another. You usually increase the intimacy and the depth of those disclosures over time. And you work to meet each other's interpersonal needs. And those needs that we're going to talk about later when we talk about interpersonal needs theory, but they include inclusion, affection, and control. Now, good relationships are mutually satisfying and they're healthy. Okay, so these are not these dysfunctional relationships of codependence or relationships that include violence or some sort of verbal abuse. So good relationships are both mutually satisfying and healthy to those that are involved in those relationships. An acquaintance is someone you know by name and you communicate out of opportunity with them. And you may even have some good level of disclosure with them, but the interaction is limited, and when the opportunity is not there anymore, then usually the relationship ends. Friendships are voluntarily negotiated as more personal relationships as you voluntarily enter into them. It's not something that's required of you. You don't have to be friends with somebody, and they're more personal because you actually disclose more information to one another. You provide a level of support for one another. And close friends and other kinds of intimates like romantic partners and even some family members to an extent have high degrees of commitment with one another. They're interdependent, so they fulfill needs that you have in one another's lives. You have high levels of disclosure. You trust one another, and there's a degree of loyalty there. And so hopefully you're seeing some of the different types of relationships that you engage in. You're probably thinking of examples. Within those relationships, though, the Johari window helps us to understand what is known to us and to the other person within that relationship, and kind of gives us an indication of the levels of disclosure that we have with them. Now, the open window on the Johari window is that which is known to both self and other. So you might think of this as being maybe things that you know about yourself in terms of your personality, and others seem to recognize that as well. You know that you're very extroverted, that you're outgoing, and other people recognize that too. They think you're the life of the party, you're always talking, you're always friendly with them, and you make them feel comfortable. And those would be things known to other people and you. Now, within a relationship, you also have things that are secret. That is, you know them about yourself, but they're not known to the other person because you haven't chosen to disclose them to that person. And maybe it's because you're managing privacy, you haven't built up a level of trust with them, or maybe it's that you don't really feel like the relationship that you have with them merits that kind of disclosure. And in some cases, if you have an impersonal relationship, or if it's just an acquaintance, you might have a number of things that are in that secret category because you just don't go around telling people everything about yourself. Then you have a blind category, and that is that which is unknown to yourself, but other people recognize it. For example, some people might know that you snore because you fell asleep in class, or your roommate heard you snoring, but you don't realize it because you're asleep when it happens. That's probably a pretty common example of something that may be blind to you but known to other people. Sometimes some of your skills and strengths and talents may be blind to you, but other people start to recognize them. And it becoming known to you and becoming transition to the open category is dependent on those people sharing it with you. That way you know it and they know it. Now then, there's an unknown segment of the Johari window in which these are things that are not known to you and they're not known to the other person either. And of course there are things about ourselves that are unexplored and that we haven't really come to understand about ourselves, and nobody else knows them about us either.